Now, I'm looking forward to this immensely for our guest speaker. So let us make him feel really welcome. Matthew Toman!
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I really appreciate it. Today has been brilliant. I've sat at the front row and I've watched most of the talks, and there's so many tips, there's so many things that I'm going to take straight and put them right back into my business, so you really get a lot here. So we are all here for a reason today, and you know, I didn't know why mine was, but now I do after hearing all the speakers and getting all the tips. But if you're here and you're looking to maybe level up, you're maybe looking to move your business to a different level, you're maybe seeing your bank balance and you're thinking, I'd like a bit more in there. You're maybe saying, God, at this stage of my life, I thought maybe I'd be living in a different house. Or maybe you're thinking that your team and your business should be doing better than what it is. Now, I have been in this situation for a period of my life, and it was one of the toughest parts. But for a second, just visualize seeing the house that you've always wanted to live in, seeing the business, you know, doing exactly the numbers that you wanted to do, and seeing everybody around you really, really happy and everything going the right way it's meant to go. So there was one quote that I found out a couple of years ago, and it stuck with me. Anybody got a pen and paper? Write this down. It is, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Now, this is one of the most important quotes that I have found through everything that I've read or everything that I've wrote down or anything like that. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Now, I didn't know this quote, and I didn't really know what was going on in my life, and I didn't know the reasons why. 6 weeks before my 30th birthday, whenever I was queuing up on Thomas Street in the social welfare and asking, can I have €188? I had lost everything that I had been working from I was 16, and I found myself at the lowest point in my life. Things weren't always like that. I had grown up in a town in Lurgan. I went to school, and I wasn't really academic. I didn't really fit in school, and I couldn't really understand why. So whenever I went to, got the first opportunity I could, I left school at 16, and I wanted to get a job. In Northern Ireland, you actually get your national insurance number whenever you're 15, and whenever I got mine, that day after school, I went straight up into the recruitment agency in the town with my best friend, Raymond Daly. We told a tiny lie about our date of birth, and we started in a chicken factory that night on the evening shift. We were so keen to get working. This was not my first time that I had a job. Whenever I was about 10, I started working in my grandfather's pet shop. And you know, whenever you walk into a pet shop and you get the smell of it and you get the feeling of it, and especially if you're a kid, if anybody in the audience has kids and they bring their kids to a pet shop, you know how exciting you feel about it, you know how that feels. So whenever I went to the pet shop, I loved it. I got a buzz every day. I was feeding the fish and checking people out on the checkout. So I got my first tip from my grandfather. One day, whenever I walked into work with my dad, and I opened the door, and I was expecting to see all the fish, and I seen tables and chairs and sofas and knives and forks, and I said, what is going on? I said to my granddad, where's the pet shop? Wasn't working. We had to change things up. So at that point, he ended up had taught me my first lesson, and that was my tip. If things aren't working, you're going to have to change them. Looking back now, I can see this is stuff that I implement into my business every day and stuff that I do. But at that time, I didn't really know the lessons that I was getting, and this was continuously throughout my whole life. We all got tips today, and people stood up and showed us slides and showed that this is your tip. We have been getting tips for our whole lives. And it isn't until you realize that things don't happen to you, they happen for you, to the point that you're thinking, that's why that happened. And that means for the good stuff as well. So whenever I left school at 16, I started working in a coleslaw factory, a chicken factory, and I had said anything that I could possibly do. My mom and dad wanted me to go on to further education, and it wasn't something that I was prepared to do because I struggled so much in school. I got diagnosed with dyslexia in my 20s, and this is one of the reasons why I'd struggled so much, and I couldn't really understand why. But I made a compromise, and I got a trade. So I started working for 2 days a week in a YTP scheme, and I was becoming a refrigeration engineer. So I worked refrigeration during the day, I worked coleslaw at the weekends, I sold clothes in the shopping centre at the week, and done anything that I had to do, because I had set my first goal without knowing what goal setting was. It was to buy a car. I done everything that I could do, possibly, to have that car. I had no time to drive it. I was paying for a car that was in my driveway, and I couldn't even drive it anywhere. So at that point, looking back now, and I think, okay, what about goal setting? We mentioned goal setting so much today. It's so important to have goals. I have the guys who work with me have goals. Everybody around me, I get to set goals around the business that we do and everything that we do, and it's so important. But at that time, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just working towards everything that I thought would get me there. So we didn't have Instagram or Facebook or any of these other devices that are platforms that we could look and see inspiration from people. We're blessed right now that we can go online and we can see a positive quote that can trail us out of a mindset. We can look online and say, God, I'd love to have that house, or I'd love to have this. You know, Pinterest, people pick their whole house out by Pinterest these days. So at that point, we didn't have any of this, so I was looking around me for inspiration. And I was looking at the people in my town, and I was thinking to myself, okay, what do they do? Or how? So I looked at someone that had a really nice car, and I thought, how'd they get that? How'd they get that house? How'd they get all this? There was one common denominator through the people that I was looking at, and they were all into property. So I decided, I'd set my second goal. I'm buying a house. I'm getting into property, and this is what I'm doing. So I worked really, really hard, and I ended up buying my first house when I was 19. I bought my second house when I was 22, and my third house when I was 23. The boom was flying. There was money in the houses, there was equity there, and everything was going great. I thought, this is brilliant. I was in my 20s, and I went, does anybody went traveling in their 20s? Did anybody go to Australia and all over the place? You know, I went and I had a great time whenever I was traveling. And all the houses were working while I was away, and I didn't really have to work. I thought, God, this is great. I'm having a real ball. So all through my 20s, I was thinking, this is great. I was investing in different businesses. I would take an equity out of that. I was putting it into this. And I'd set myself a goal to be a millionaire before I was 30. Now, I really thought that that was going to happen. I genuinely did. At that time, I just thought, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep working, and I'm going to keep buying houses and flipping them and doing everything. So anybody who's, you know what's coming next, especially with the recession, anybody who had been in a position where the recession started to kick in and you're starting to think to yourself, what am I going to do? What's happening? My first happened to me whenever I went to remortgage one of my houses. I went to remortgage one of the houses, and the bank said, you can't afford the mortgage for this. I was thinking, oh my God, what do you mean you can't afford it? You aren't earning enough money. It's like, oh God, right, okay, so what do I do then? You go on to a new interest rate. I'm like, but I can't afford that. And as it went, the next one went on to that interest rate, and the next one went on to that interest rate. Before you knew it, I was drowning in debt. And I was really, really scared. Feeling quite alone because I didn't want to tell anybody. And I took, myself off, and I decided, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get out of Northern Ireland, and I'm going to go to Dublin. I transferred to Dublin, and I buried my head in the sand. Anybody in the room here that has been through the recession, or they've lost houses and they feel that, the banks just keep ringing, people keep wanting money, just because you don't have it, they don't care. So they put you in a position where you're feeling really, really, you're on a downward spiral and you feel very lost and alone. I chose not to tell my closest friends or my family what was going on with me, just because I didn't want to burden them. I felt like a failure myself, and I felt I can deal with this, something's going to happen, something's going to happen. Something did happen. I ended up losing my job. So not only was I drowned in debt, had no money, I also had no job. I had to go to the social welfare, and I had to go and say, look, I have no job, I have all this debt, and I need a handout. That was one of the toughest things I had to do, because I didn't ever see myself in that position. Whenever I was really confident, whenever I was younger and I was buying houses and I was buying cars and I was setting these goals and I was doing what I wanted, I never seen myself standing on the unemployment line with no money, with no help, and feeling very scared and afraid to tell anybody. Just before this crash happened, just before I left my job, I ended up going to America, and I met this guy while I was out there, and at this point we were running for 2 years and everything was going downhill and it was happening quite rapidly. But whenever I ended up going over to America, I met a guy, Steve G. Jones, his name is. He's a very successful hypnotherapist, multimillionaire, and a therapist to the stars. I felt very comfortable with him as soon as I met him, and I ended up telling him everything that happened. Steve became my first mentor. Anybody who in the room who does not have a mentor, get one. Get a mentor, somebody you trust, someone who's already been through what you've been through, and someone is so successful that you can't even believe that you'll even reach that. Having a mentor was one of the key points that pulled me out of this cycle. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Looking back now, I had to lose my job. I had to end up on unemployment, and I had to go through the hardest parts of my life. Everybody here is going through different things at different times, and if you stick to that, the things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And I started to feel confident with him whenever he told me, go back to Ireland, go back to speak to your accountant, go back to speak to the banks and deal with this problem. Take your head out of the sand and deal with the problem. Now, speaking to the banks wasn't really a problem, to be honest with you. Speaking to my parents was another thing. I had to go back and say to my mum, who told me, don't you buy any houses? Don't you do that? I told you so. So I went back to I took the long drive up the road from Dublin into Lurgan, and I stopped with my mum and dad, and I said, look, things have changed over the past couple of years. I'm in financial debt, I'm struggling, I've lost my job, and which they did know about, but I've lost my job, and I said, I'm going to have to give the houses back. My mum said straight away, what are you going to do about those tenants? What are you going to do about this, and what are you going to do about that? At that moment, I made a statement which, it came out of my mouth before I even thought about it, and I said, Mum, would you rather I killed myself? Right? Now, I had not felt suicidal throughout this whole process. I'd felt alone, I'd felt down, I'd felt sad, but I was reading in the paper how people in America and people in Republic of Ireland and people in the UK were killing themselves over debt. And I was reading these stories and I could not believe it. I was thinking, what are they doing? But in those moments, it does feel really sad and it does feel really, really lonely, as I did. And I can understand a bit. In that moment, my mom screamed, what are you talking about? Get rid of everything. That's it. Rid of everything. They were back on my side. I was back down thing. I drove to Belfast and I signed everything with my accountant. And the drive back to Dublin was one of the nicest drives I'd had in many, many years. Anybody who's lost their house, anybody who has lost a business, anybody who has seen financial difficulty in this room will understand this process is years. You're going through it for years. The people are contacting you for years. So things aren't happening to me, they're happening for me. Looking back now, I'm thinking, yes, I had to meet Steve G. Jones. He had to take my head out of the sand and he had to drive me down and make me deal with my problems. That is one thing that I advise everybody to do, just deal with problems that you have. So coming back to Dublin, I had been nothing more than getting up at 7:30 in the morning, getting into my van or going to work, and I had purpose. At that time in my life, I had purpose. I was able to get up, I was able to go to work, I was able to serve my clients, I was meet my tenants. Whenever I was on unemployment and I had no job to do, and I was waking up at like 11:15 in the morning, lying looking at the ceiling, thinking, what am I going to do in my life? I didn't have any purpose anymore. I felt very, very worthless, and I felt like, what am I going to do? In 2010, I was handed a book called The Secret, which I know Bernie had pointed out. A lot of people in this room have read it and watched the movie and everything like that. I pulled it back out and I started to read it again. I was going through every word and I was thinking, okay, right, I need to make lists. Okay, I need to write down what I want to do. I need to see what I'm going to do. I knew what I didn't want to do anymore. I didn't want to be a landlord and I didn't want to be any of those things. But now I had to pick, what do I want to do? I had this weird sense of like, right, I can choose this life for myself. I can actually pick what this life is. People all through the years had said to me, have you ever thought about acting? Have you ever thought about getting into acting? Have you ever thought anything about that? I don't know why, but for some reason, as I was reading The Secret, this was coming through, and I was thinking, God, maybe am I meant to be an actor, And I ended up doing what anybody would do. I got onto Google, and I searched an acting class, and I joined one. So at this point, I had decided I'm going to be an actor. That was my next thing that I was going to do. So every Tuesday and Thursday night that I was in that acting class, I was standing on stage and I was in front of people that didn't know me. They were strangers, they became friends, and I was pretending to be somebody else. This was the biggest escape for me. I was the brokest I ever was. I was more time on my hands than I ever had in my entire life, and I was actually the happiest. Setting a goal whenever you're in your 20s to become a millionaire before your 30s, I don't think it's a bad thing, and I definitely think it's achievable. But the one key thing that I made a mistake on was I was chasing money. I was never thinking about what actually was making me passionate, what I was thinking about, what was driving my soul, and what was making me feel good about, getting out of bed in the morning. I was in an acting class, and I met the guys the next day. I found my tribe. We were all on the social welfare. We were all broke, and we all went for pints after class. We were meeting during the day and like running lines and running scenes from Rocky and everything. It was a crazy time, and it was really brilliant. In my acting class, I met a director, and in the first class that he brought with us, he asked me, would you be in my movie? Now, at this point, I thought, oh my God, It's happening. I'm an actor, you know. I got cast in my first movie and I thought, this is it. I knew this was right. The secret's brilliant. I was like, that is it. I'm on a roll. So I ended up arriving on the set and I thought it was brilliant. The hustle, the bustle, the cameras, the lights and everything. They put so much makeup on me that my mum and dad could never have picked me up from a lineup 6 feet away from me. And whenever I shot my scene, it was 7 seconds, if that. You wouldn't have known. I didn't care. I was thinking, this is brilliant, I'm in a movie. You know, no one would have recognized me and that was it. But me being really sound and hanging around on set and having good fun with the director made me move into my next role, which he asked me would I be in the next movie, which I was supporting lead in, and I thought, yes, I would love to be in that. So going back to thinking about you got to do what you got to do to get what you want to get to, I was doing anything that I could to sort of get me in front of these directors and get me in front of these people to get jobs, you know, and being on set. And I was just doing anything because I knew this was my new path. We were meant to be filming on a Saturday, and the director rang me. I rang the director and I said to him, look, what's happening on Saturday? What's going on? And he said, unfortunately, we're not going to be filming on Saturday. He said, me and the producers had a bit of a falling out and we're not going to be making the movie. Now, this was my big break. This movie was actually my big break, and I was thinking, this movie has to get made. You need to make this movie. So I rang him and I said, well, what has to be done? And he said, well, we need it produced. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he started telling me what a producer done. And I was thinking, that sounds simple. It sounds like what I was doing refrigeration. It sounds like what I was doing property. It sounds like all these different skill sets that I'd been picking up over the years was what he was telling me that needs to be done in this movie. That Saturday, I had hired cars for the whole crew, whole cast, everything, and we were driving down to Galway to film the final scene of the movie in a psychiatric ward. Now, at that point, I probably could have stayed there because I was just thinking, I was in flow. You know, whenever you go into flow, whenever you feel like something's going right and you're like, right, okay, I'm in flow. This was a step into what was now my career and now my new life. I worked for that company for 2 years for not a single penny. I drove all over the country and I produced movies. Anything they wanted me to produce, a music video, a feature film, a low budget, I was driving and I was doing anything that I could because I wanted to pick up my skill set. I wanted to get as much information as I could, and I wanted to learn everything that I could because I had a feeling that this was right. Something just felt right for me. You know, whenever you're in a job or whenever you're in different things, you will get all these clues and all these feelings inside, and you'll think, I don't really know why I'm doing this, but it just feels right. It just feels that I'm ready to go here already. So I did ask this company at one point, look, is there an opportunity for me to work here? And they said, no, unfortunately, we can't employ anybody at the minute. So I decided I need to get back into the working life. I was really tired of being broke. I was so tired of being broke. I'd never not had money in my entire life, and this was a long time where I was very, very happy, but now I was ready to get paid again. I looked at various different jobs in production, and I just thought, I'm not going to get these. I'm not qualified enough, and I'm not going to go for it. My only option at that time was to start my own business. Now, I had not got €5 in my pocket, and I was struggling to get rent at the end of the month. I had nothing. But I was starting to get the belief back into myself, and I was starting to get in my stomach, I was starting to feel the self-worth and the worth that I had whenever pre-recession and pre-everything else, whenever I was a child, and it was coming back into me, and I was feeling confident. And I was thinking, I actually can do this. I feel that I can do this. So I actually, through the whole one thing that the production really, really taught me, and this is something that I think everybody in this audience should do, asking for help is something that none of us do enough. You know, we're all standing there and we think, I'm not going to ask that, I'm afraid they won't want to help me. See, whenever you ask for somebody for help, they love helping you. It makes them feel good. Why would you deprive somebody else from feeling good about themselves? Ask for help. So I was asking everybody for help at this point because I was looking for free locations and free cameras and free everything. And I was just trying to get as much in the productions that I could. So I ended up going to the social welfare and I said, look, I want to start my own business and I need some help. They were so accommodating. I could not believe it. I got put in touch with a company called Inner City Enterprise, and I moved forward very fast, and they ended up setting up my business. Now, Inner City Enterprise are an amazing organization that have various different people getting back into the working world. They'd done my business plan. They said, we'll set up your CRO number, we'll set up this, we'll set up your VAT. The only thing you have to do is pick the name. I said, okay, right. So that was one of the hardest parts, to be honest. I was walking down Thomas Street back to my apartment, not a penny to my name. thinking, what the hell am I going to call my production company? Thinking that this was definitely the answer. I was pushing the door open on my building, and I just saw the plaque that I'd been living in for so long, the house that actually gave me the creativity and everything in there, and it was called Bankhouse. And I thought, you want to know what? Bankhouse Productions. I like the sound of that. I rang them up and I said, look, the name's Bankhouse Productions, and that's it. On the 1st of August 2014, Bankhouse Productions was born. I was no longer on unemployment. I started to have the belief in myself coming back to me, and I started to really feel like I had worth again. I started to feel like, yes, this is definitely the way that I need to go, and this is where I need to be. Very rapidly, work started coming in, and we started feeling really, really good. The business was starting to roll, and everything was going the right direction. I was still taking bits and nuggets of everything. I was doing TV commercials, I was doing radio ads, I was doing filming horse shows, I was filming out in farms. I'd done whatever I had to do to get what I had to get. You know, I was working and doing these videos that I didn't really see myself in. I wanted to do movies and I wanted to do documentaries and I wanted to work at a really, really high level. But I had to do all this other stuff that was paying my bills. It was paying the people that were around me, and I now had responsibilities for people working for me. So anybody out here that is sitting in a position today where, you know, maybe you've got a full-time job and forever's a sideline for now. Or maybe you've got forever and you maybe have to take a part-time job to kind of get yourself by, you know, while you're building up your business. You got to do what you have, anything, just to get it going and just keep at it and keeping at it, because all of it works out in the end. Things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And anything good and anything bad, that is the same thing. Bankhouse was doing really, really well, and we got nominated for an award in 2015. I got nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year at the Inner City Enterprise Awards 2015, and I thought, oh my God, I need to win this. And the reason why I wanted to win it, because I felt like this was validation for me. I felt like all this crap that I've been through for so many years and all this stuff, like being broke and going through the hardest times of my life, it has to amount to something, and this is the answer. This is something that comes to me. So we were out there in the night, and I brought two of my friends with me, and my mum ends up walking into the room and surprising me, which added more pressure, which was so much more emotional. I was like, I can't cope with this. This is really crazy. So I was trying to hold it together as much as I possibly could in this organization, because I wasn't sure if I was going to win or not. On the stage, they said, the winner of the Entrepreneur of the Year is Robert Giffney. So I didn't end up winning. And I was so stressed out about the whole award ceremony going through, and we didn't end up winning that award, that I hadn't even noticed that there was actually an all-over award for everybody that was involved. They then went to proceed to call out another award, which was Most Innovative Business of 2015, and Bankhouse Productions won it. Now, yeah. This was probably the most emotional I had been in a long time. I was really emotional because everything I'd been working towards, everything I'd been doing, and people thinking I was crazy, going to acting classes and starting production companies and making movies. It was like, yes, I've got validation. So I was very emotional on the night. I'd had a couple of Jameson because they sponsored the event. And yes, so I was worst 3 sheets to the wind. And I ended up being pulled to one side by a journalist for the Irish Times. Now, he said to me, you know, can you tell me a bit about your story, or how do you feel about winning tonight? I bust out crying. I said, oh my God. It's like everybody was celebrating, and I was there. You don't understand. I lost everything in the recession. I've been like on unemployment. I've been like, people didn't believe me this was going to happen, and now I've got this award. I ended up pouring my soul out to him. The whole time through social welfare, 5 people knew I was on it. Nobody knew. I would not tell anybody because I was ashamed. I felt like failure. I felt like things just weren't going the way that I wanted them to in my life, and I felt like I can't tell anybody this. One of my best friends texted me the morning after and said, the message read, you didn't tell me you were on unemployment, but you've told the whole country? I said, what are you talking about? In the massive spread in the Irish Times that day was my whole story about being on unemployment, being through the crap, being through the worst part. The awards got covered that much in the bottom corner. Joe spoke there about your story. Your story is so important. Everything that I thought was my weakness and my crutch turned out to be my strength. I was afraid to tell people what was going on with me and what was happening in my life. And that turned out to be the biggest thing and the best thing that ever could have happened. Bankhouse moved to another level. Everybody said, God, I want to talk to this guy. This guy's a success story. I want to work with him. I want to do everything. We've went on and done a documentary with Colin Farrell, like a Hollywood actor. Can't believe it. Our movies have went around the world. We've won awards. We've done cinema releases. I've sold movies to RTE. I've sold movies to BBC. We've got funded by the film boards. We've got funded by everything. All because I was completely honest that night. I told my story. I broke it down for the journalist, and I put it out to the world. I went back out to the States, and I met with my mentor, Steve G. Jones. Whenever I started telling him everything that was going on, his mouth was open. His mouth dropped open, and he said, I cannot believe that you've done all this. You went back to Ireland and done all this? And I said, yeah, and I was showing him the awards, and I was showing him the trailers for movies, and he said, you need to make a documentary about this. And I just said, who the hell would watch it? I said, why would anybody want to watch a documentary about this? And he said, you are true life experience, that changing your mindset, changing your thoughts, and moving forward in the right directions with clear goals works. He said, you're a real life example of this. I was running at 100 miles an hour at every job. At that point, I hadn't stopped to even think what was going on. So I said to him, who would be in it? And he said, well, I will be in it. And Steve is a very successful hypnotherapist to the stars and quite famous in America. But I said, who else would be in it? And he said, Joe Vitale would be in it. Now, I'm there like trying to contain myself in his apartment without losing my stomach. I'm like, okay, right, Joe Vitale. And I was like, do you know Joe? And he said, yeah, I know Joe. He took out his phone there and then, and he rang Joe Vitale. Right, so I'm there I'm thinking, Jesus Christ. I'm like, right, okay, no worries. And he said, Joe, I've got this Irish producer here. He wants to make a movie. He's a law of attraction. He's a secret. He has everything wrapped up in one. You want to see what's just happened? Will you be in it? He said, I don't know who he is, but I trust you. Yes, I'll be in it. I had Joe Vitale and Steve G. Jones signed up to my documentary. I was stuck back in the same situation that I was whenever I opened my business. What the hell am I going to call this documentary? So we were going through various different names and ended up we've created now the Evolution of Success, which tells, it gives all the tips and tricks and all the things that we've done, that I have done over the years. Joe Vitale, Bob Doyle, and Jack Canfield are three people that pulled me out of my darkest days with The Secret, and those three people are in my documentary. I ended up spending 3 days with Jack Canfield in Las Vegas. He taught me some of the best lessons I've ever taught in person. I spent 2 days with Bob Doyle in LA, and I was 3 sheets to the wind at one point with a couple of Jamesons, but next week marks 3 years off alcohol, which has been a massive thing going forward with business. So I was only 1 month off alcohol whenever I had met Bob Doyle, and I was actually planning on going back on the drink. I hadn't really decided to stay off it forever. And I met him and he said, yeah, I've given up alcohol for a year. And I just asked him, why have you given up alcohol? And he started to tell me why. And I thought, you want to know what? He said, do another month and see how you get on. 3 years on, I'm actually happy enough, so that's fine. So these people were actually mentoring me, not only in their books, not only in the movies, but in person. I could not believe this was happening. This was something like, at this point, 3 years previous, we're only at 3 years at this point, I was on unemployment with not €5 in my bank account. Nowhere to live and staying in my friend's sister's house. At this point, I was starting to think, right, okay, this is crazy, this is nuts, you know? And whenever we look back, and I say, like, at that time, whenever I was standing on the social welfare, and I was thinking, whenever I was asking for 188 quid, and it was the lowest point in my life, I was now starting to think, if I hadn't went through that, if I hadn't went through those darkest days, and if I hadn't went through those darkest times, would I be standing here right now? Would I have met Steve? Would I have met Joe? Would I have met all these people? And the answer is no. You know, it was, as I said a couple of years ago, that I found out that quote, and now I adapt that into everything that we do in work and everything that we do with our movies. There's one thing that went through from whenever I was younger, that I had from whenever I was 4 years old, 10 years old, whatever. I had extreme belief in myself. I don't know why, I don't know how. It just came naturally, and I really, really believed. I believed I could do anything. That's why I went and bought a house. I believed I could do anything. I went and bought a car. I got it instinctively. Whenever I got hit by the hard times, I lost that. I lost my value. I lost my belief. I lost everything that I believed to be real. I just thought, I don't have this anymore. Now, I couldn't put my finger on what it was. It took me several years and loads of different skills to try and bring that belief back into me. What I now know to be true, that every single one of us in this room and every single person on the planet has got belief and has got value, but they just don't know how to get it. You know, you might be sitting right now and you're thinking, how can I end up bringing my business to this level? I don't know. I'm not sure. We talked today about £300 on the board and £400. Whenever I looked at that board, I saw 20,000 a month. That's what I want. I didn't look at the 200, I didn't look at the 300, I looked at the 20,000. Whenever I was at my lowest point and 188 quid was my life, I would have killed for 200 extra quid. I couldn't see it when I was at that level. Why? Why can none of us see it when we're at that level? Why can we not see? Why? We're not dreaming big enough. I went through a short period in my life when I just did not dream big enough. See, now my dreams and ambitions are higher than anything because it's been proven to me that it works. Jack Canfield is in my movie. He wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, the 64 Success Principles, and pretty much mentored Tim Ferriss through his career. We all have to believe in ourselves. We all have to believe that it's possible. And we all have to set our dreams, our ambitions, and our goals way higher than anybody is right now. Everybody in this room, I would imagine, has goals because the talk on the stage today were brilliant, and they're driving you to it, and the training you're getting from Forever Living sounds to be brilliant if this happens every once a month or once every 6 weeks. It's absolutely fantastic. But I don't think that anybody, even in this room, you need to raise the bar. We all need to raise the bar. I need to raise the bar. I looked at some of those messages today from up on the thing that read today, and I thought, I need to do that. Why the hell have I not done that with my clients? I need to go back into my office on Monday and I need to tell my staff that they're doing that. They're taxing the clients, they're being personal, and they're saying, how can we help you? How can we add more value? Adding more value and talking to your clients and all these different things that you've been taught today is what we need to really, really instill into our lives and into our businesses to see results. Set clear intentions, set clear goals, and really, really move forward in the right direction. Now, there is meditation. I know some of the people have talked about meditation today. Meditation is a massive, massive part of my life. And to be honest with you, for 10 years I said, why are people telling me to meditate? What the hell's that? I'm not doing that. God, I wish I had meditated 10 years previous because I don't think I would have got into the same situation that I get into. But things don't happen for you. Things don't happen to you. They happen for you. And I got meditation at the right time in my life. So what does this all mean to you guys? Why am I standing here? Why am I literally telling you this? And why is anybody hung around to 4 o'clock today to even listen to me, which I think is a lot for? Because we're all the same. We're all in the same boat. We're all business owners. I'm a business owner. My struggles are the same as yours. As somebody had said on the stage today, which I always say as well, no matter whether you're 100 quid in debt or you're a million quid in debt or you have this problem or that problem, the feelings are still the same. You still feel the same. You still have to deal with the main emotions. Everybody is going to say to us at some point, that is a crap idea. Why are you doing that? I heard the word scam thrown around a couple of times today, and I heard a few different words put like that. All these people are going to say this to us. You're going to come against them at all times. People are always going to come and tell you the reason why you can't do something. I can't do it because of that, and I can't do it because of that. The only thing that we have control over is how we react to it. The only thing is you have control over is how you react every time somebody tells me you can't do something. Whenever someone tells me I can't do something, I get a tiny bit of burning in my belly and I think I'm going to prove you wrong. But I don't always prove them wrong because sometimes it's the wrong reason to do it. Don't do something to prove somebody wrong. Do something because you've got the burning passion for it in your stomach and you have no other option in your life but to do it. Once you start with that and you feel really, really good about it, everything else works out. Following your passion, not chasing money, and just understanding that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. My name is Matthew Toman. Thank you so much for staying around to 4 o'clock today and listening. And I want to thank you all for